In America, there's lots of racists, right? And the southern half of the country, they're more outwardly racist than the northern part. And so to the point where they had to pass a thing called the Voting Rights Act because the white people who controlled the government in the South wouldn't let black people vote. They would put poll taxes on, and they would put barriers. And so they had to pass this thing called the Voting Rights Act, which mean that any of those states in the South that were proven to be blocking black people from voting traditionally, anytime they wanted to make a change to their voting laws, they had to first get it approved by the feds. That's all over with. They say that's all over with. The Supreme Court said there's no need, even though it got renewed again, the Voting Rights Act it sailed through Congress. The Supreme Court said, nope, we're getting rid of the Voting Rights Act. And as soon as they got rid of it, states all across the country that are in Republican hands started passing laws to restrict the vote, meaning to suppress the vote, meaning making it hard for poor minority people to vote. Passing, you had to have a voter ID. Now, they know when they pass that law, they can figure out somehow how many people that's going to exclude. They know how many people have it, don't have IDs, and aren't going to be able to get one, and they know they can exclude them. Not only that, in Texas put in these restrictive laws to get rid of votes, right? It's great. There couldn't be anything worse in America, that, in my mind, than the one man, one vote supposed to be the thing that's precious to us. And so when you see these people try to stop people from voting, you know they have no interest in democracy. They don't. So, or liberty or freedom, they couldn't care less. They care about power and their side winning. So Texas court was ordered to do a bunch of things. They ordered the Texas state legislature to do. They're not doing it. So this is from Slate. Texas put under court supervision after lying to voters about the illegal ID rules. So they know when they pass these laws, these restrictive voter ID laws, they know, like for instance in Texas, that it's going to impact, that it's going to be severe. 608,470 registered voters, or 4.5% of all registered voters in Texas, lack the necessary ID to vote. That's pretty stunning, isn't it?
Staggering.
That is staggering. So they know that already. Hey, we can get rid of almost 5% of the vote, and those are the 5% who don't vote for us. So let's pass this law. The judge steps in and says, no, you got to tell people, oh, you can't do that. Not only that, but you have to let people know that they can vote without an ID, which they didn't do. Oh, by the way, Hispanic registered voters are 195% more likely than whites to lack an ID. 195% more likely. And black registered voters are a stunning 305% more likely than whites to not hold an ID. Back in July, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit Court ruled that Texas's draconian new voter ID requirements are in fact illegal under the Federal Voting Rights Act because they discriminate against minorities. In accordance with the decision, U.S. District Judge Nelva Gonzalez Ramos forbade the state from enforcing the blocked law or disenfranchising voters who lacked ID. But Texas quickly violated this order by actively misleading voters about ID requirements in statements to the press and in official voting materials. So even after the judge said you got to tell them the truth, the state officials continued to lie to their own citizens, trying to keep them from participating in democracy. While Ramos ruled that voters could legally sign an affidavit swearing they could not reasonably obtain ID, Texas officials implied that they would criminally investigate everyone who signed that form.
Jesus.
Isn't that amazing? So they're supposed to let them know that, hey, if you don't have an ID, just have to sign this affidavit and you can go vote. So then they tell people anybody who signs that form is going to be criminally investigated. Isn't that amazing? Judge Ramos also ordered Texas to educate voters about the ability to vote without an ID if they cannot reasonably obtain it. Yet the state recast Ramos' language, declaring in its educational materials that only voters who cannot obtain ID at all may sign the affidavit. As the Justice Department noted in a complaint, quote, This inaccurate and misleading information suggests that voters who would face a heavy burden in obtaining an approved ID but could still theoretically get one must still present an ID to vote. So here's that thing. That's what they were putting out. They're putting out these voting pamphlets that said voter ID required for Texas voters. You must present one of the following forms of photo ID when voting in person. And then it has at the bottom exemptions. But again,
So Trump says he wants to build a huge wall. Texas wants to build a wall around the voting booth.
yes. And so that's untrue. Photo ID required for Texas voters. No, it's not. That's not true. Some Texas election officials are simply deceiving voters and poll workers, informing them that photo ID is still required to cast a ballot. In response, Ramos took the remarkable step on Tuesday of putting Texas under court supervision. The state is now required to reissue its press releases and edit its educational materials to correctly reflect the court's ruling using language issued by the court itself.
Giving citizens false information. How desperate are you? And what a terrible betrayal of democracy to do that. Deceiving citizens, deceiving potential voters. Wow.
That Texas, it seems, has so thoroughly flouted the court's initial ruling that Ramos no longer trusts officials to represent the current state law correctly, the current state of the law correctly, and says it needs to reissue its press release and edit its educational materials to reflect the court's ruling.
So Lyndon Johnson, a Texan, who created the Voters' Rights Act that the Supreme Court repealed. This was all part of his Great Society program. The Republicans in Texas now have the Not So Great Society program.
Yes, that is what they have. Judge Ramos also required officials to provide the Justice Department and voting rights plaintiffs with, quote, scripts and copy for documents and advertisements that have not yet been published for review and objection prior to publication. As Christian Farias noted in the Huffington Post, this order suggests that these parties will be able to object to duplicitous materials before they are distributed to voters. So there you go. In America, freest country, we have much better culture than other cultures, except half our culture works against the poorest and most vulnerable in our culture and tries to deny them participation in our democracy. That's what white guys in suits who went to colleges, they have power, and they go, screw people who are poor and of a different ethnic background than us. I don't want them to have the same participation level as I do, so we're going to screw them over. Why? For power and money. And that's because we have a better culture in America. We're better than other cultures.
And we have to have this. Is so low in this.
We have to have the Supreme Court say that you can't discriminate against the most vulnerable amongst you, and then as soon as they get rid of it, bam! They go, and they're doing it all out in the open too, and that's why when you find out there are black Republicans, that's why being a black Republican is a kind of mental illness that I will never understand. It's like being a gay Republican. It's like being a black guy in the Klan. Like, what are you doing? Does Colin Powell not realize that most of his friends are racists? Does he not realize he's in a party that still uses the Southern strategy? Right now, they have a nominee that's not using a Southern strategy. He's just using a racist strategy.
Well, all the black members of the Ku Klux Klan that I know, they tell me that they're trying to change the party from within.
From within. That's why I joined that. That's why they joined the Klan. So there you go. We're much better culture, much better country, much better everything. Texas, one of the biggest states in the goddamn country. Texas, I think, is bigger than Africa and Australia combined.
You almost get the impression it's 2016. There's been zero progress made for how to cast my vote. Zero progress in the last 20 years.
Zero.
Right? I mean, we saw what happened to Al Gore. Has any kind of progress been made as far as making it easier, accessible, and
No.
longer for me to vote?
No, what they do is they put it on computers, which are much easier to hack. So I have no confidence in our elections, and I don't mean, I guess I don't know if that's considered irresponsible to say that, but I don't. We saw what happened in 2000, and Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s in 2004 said that Kerry got it was. I can't believe that the country voted for George Bush twice. They didn't. They didn't for sure the first time. The first time Al Gore won that, he got the popular vote, and nobody disagrees with that. That he won the popular vote, but he doesn't get to become. Can you imagine having to explain that to a foreigner? Hey, you guys have democracy, kind of. You get to vote for president, kind of. We get to vote for a person who then goes vote for us, for the person to then vote for. But the guy who gets the most votes, does he win? No, not really. Not if they don't want him. Not if power doesn't want him to. So yeah, there you go. Way to go.
We're reversing progress because stealing elections works.
Stealing
From
elections,
gerrymandering to reversing the Voters' Rights Act. You got to have that wiggle room so you can steal an election.
And by the way, the Democrats not much better inside their own party. They screwed over their own voters inside their own party this time. So they tried to rig.
I was an election observer in California. I can tell you that is true.
There you go. So think about that. And then the Democrats rigged their own primary to screw over populists in favor of a corporate co-opted warmonger who's in bed with Wall Street and who is working to defeat the agenda of working people. Yeah, it's a great country, but you can't vote third party or else you're crazy. Something's wrong with you. You're crazy.